In this video we're going to demonstrate how to change the mains cable on a power tool such as an electric drill like this. Many reasons why we might need to do this. It might be a frayed cable, or in the case of a hedge trimmer it might have been cut through by accident, which does sometimes happen. In this instance we've got a non-standard plug. It's obviously been used on site through a transformer, so we're going to replace that with a 3-pin plug. First thing we need to do is expose the wiring, and on most power tools such as sanders and planers and stuff like that, there will be an inspection cover which can be removed without dismantling the whole machine. In this case we've got half of the handle is a cover, and it's held on with 4 screws, so the first thing we need to do will be to remove those screws. I'm using my little drill driver, which makes some noise, but it's a lot quicker. Okay, having removed the screws, we can now remove the cover, which simply pulls off like so, and that exposes the wiring and the trigger and everything that we need to access. And we can see here that at some stage in the past this has been rewired using 3-core cable, so there's an earth there which isn't needed, there's nowhere to connect it to, so we'll replace it with 2-core cable anyway. The first thing will be to disconnect the cable from the trigger. This is the input side of the trigger, so there's 2 terminals there. They're marked 1 and 2. 1 is the live, which is the brown wire. 2 is the neutral, which is the blue wire. So we'll undo those. We also need to remove the cable grip, or clamp, whatever you want to call it, which is this part here held on with 2 screws. Right, we can now pull the wiring out. We'll remove the cable sleeve because we'll need to reuse that, but we can now dispense with this old wiring. I have cheated. I've prepared a new cable in advance. It's 2-core cable with a 3-pin plug on the end, and I've cut the tails to the right length to fit the appliance. So the first thing we need to do is to refit the cable sleeve like so. We can then wire the trigger. So number 2 terminal is the neutral, and so the blue wire goes in there. We'll tighten that down. And the live, which is the brown wire. Need to loosen off a little bit more. Right, if we put the trigger back into position, we can make sure the terminals are good and tight. No need to over tighten them, but I do need to make a good contact. Okay, the next thing to do would be to put the sleeve in place and refit the cable grip. So that goes back into place there. notice that it's not actually gripping the cable sufficiently. Make sure it goes a little bit more so it's gripping adequately. Also need to make sure that none of the cables are tight or stressed in any way. In this case we've got plenty of slack, so that can be fed down the side and put out the way. Okay, now we're ready to refit the cover. Before we do, I'll make sure that all these cables are neatly routed so they can't be nipped by the cover when we put it back on, because obviously that can damage the cables, won't do it any good at all. So cover goes back on, all fits neatly, nothing interfering with it in any way. So put the screws back in. 2 screws, long screws go at the top, and the 2 short screws go down at the bottom of the grip. Okay, we've now got correct 2-core cable and a 3-pin plug, so it's good to go.